My name is Pamela Jones, and welcome to Indigenous Astrology. Now, Indigenous Astrology is an astrology that is in alignment with nature, with natural time. It's an astrology that is in alignment with our rhythms, our natural rhythms that are in sync with Mother Nature's rhythms. Okay? We want to tune in naturally to the cycles of the seasons, the cycles of the plant life in terms of its growth, and become in sync with a peaceful energy that comes from living in harmony. Okay? We want to live in harmony. And as we sync ourselves up with the natural rhythms of the earth, the moon, and the sun, we become in alignment with the natural, positive, healing frequencies of our solar system, galaxy, and the universe. Okay. So we understand that indigenous is natural nature and it's local. It's the local environment. We want to go back to the times when people lived naturally and they knew their environment. They knew how to find the foods, plants, perhaps some animals, that they lived in the area and knew how to nourish themselves. They knew how to build structure for themselves using the natural woods or the natural dwellings around them. Maybe it was a cave, maybe it was the mountain, but they knew how to utilize their natural environment to find food, clothing, and shelter. So we're going to go back to the indigenous times and look at indigenous peoples, the indigenous people of the Americas that we know from various names, whether we call them Olmec, Mayan, the Silgalgi, or the Cherokee. We want to look at the indigenous cultures of the continent we know as Africa, whether it's the Egyptian or Kemetan, the Dogon, the Yoruba, the other various and multiplying numbers of different nations from South Africa, the San people, the Zulus. They all had astrological and astronomical information that we can tune into. And certainly we can go to areas that we know of as Mesopotamia, the Iraqis, the Iranians or Persians, the Elamites, which was another southern indigenous people that were very much known for astrology, the Chaldeans. But we want to go to the original, not the conquerors, but the people who actually came up with the indigenous information about the calendars. And again, they based it on their local needs, which again is food, clothing, navigation. Also, just as they were able to have a sense of themselves and build, they were able to focus on their own self-development, spiritual development, particularly what we know as the Egyptians. Their culture was very much about developing their inner self, their spiritual self. What we know of India, the Dravidians, they have a very strong spiritual culture. The Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata talks about a lot of astrological information, but also spiritual things that they needed to deal with. We can look at England and look at the Druids, the Celtics. They also were very much people who knew about how to deal with the cycles and built many buildings. Stonehenge is one example to help them keep abreast of time. So we're going to look at the cultures in topics coming up. But before we even get into that, we need to speak about, well, what is astrology? Now, astrology is a combination of two principles. Astrology is about, one, the law of synchronicity, that whatever is born of a moment also has the quality of that moment. That time has a quality. We can call it a pattern, we can call it a wave signature, but there is something about each time has its own energy, its own quality. It is said that in Western culture, time is money. That is an equation to weigh how we value time. But in the Mayan or Olmec traditions, time is actually an art. And so art and time are connected. And that each moment is almost like an art form if you look at the pattern. If we look at nature, as a flower grows, a flower is an art form. And it's a mathematical art form based on the way it's designed, just in terms of the flower petals and the creation of how long it takes to even create a flower. That there is a lot of art in nature if you get a chance to really have a chance to just be able to watch and admire and see, you know. It's important to recognize the art in nature. It's a beautiful thing. We can look at the waves, at the oceans, that is on an art because of the cycles of the moon and how it creates the waves. Just the cycles of the waves and the sounds is an art form. It's a vibration. It's a frequency. And this frequency is very soothing to mankind. They do almost a natural migration to the shores because of the energy that is generated. It's calming and it's soothing and it's healthy because it generates negative ions. And that is something that helps us to cope, helps us to harmonize. So again, astrology is a way to harmonize ourselves. So we understand that every time, every moment has a quality to itself. And then we understand that astrology works on the basis of the law of correspondences. So that when we look in the sky, the planets, the sun, the moon, they all have a corresponding element or that goes on Earth. There is a principle we call correspondence, the law of signatures. It's based on as above, so below. That what is going on in the heavens is mirrored on Earth some sort of way. That if there are aspects, or as the sun transits and goes through the different constellations, there is a corresponding quality that's being enhanced on Earth. So that, let's say for example, if the moon is in the sign of Virgo, and that is a time when it's a good time to be discerning, being selective, because Virgo is a very selective energy. It's a very organized energy or pattern, and it talks about harvest. It's a time of harvest. When the sun is traveling through the sign of Virgo, sidereally, our attention is paid towards harvest of foods, particularly the foods of the summertime, and that there is a resolve to see how much work that was put in to the growth of our foods. How has the harvest turned out? And that's a principle that can be correlated to life, that the Virgo energy is always assessing. It's always very much connected with the quality and the craft of doing things. So we can take that correspondence all the way through and see how it relates to other elements. There are certain cities or countries that have a Virgo energy. One that comes to mind is the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands has a very strong Virgo energy. Even cities, like for example, the city of Charleston in South Carolina has a very strong Libra energy. And if anybody's ever gone to Charleston, South Carolina, there's a very strong Venusian or beauty that is definitely enhanced. So there has been observations over thousands of years. Certainly in our herbs and plants, there is a astrological correspondence to all plants, to herbs, to gemstones. There are departments that things fall into that we would say planets have a corresponding energy to. For someone who has a very strong Mars energy, they may be very good at carpentry or building things. They have a very strong sense of providing security. So Mars people may be involved with being soldiers, security, police officers. These are all martial or Mars occupations. And that when you find out what your chart is, because your chart is a map of your, let's say at the time that you were born, you create a birth chart. And this chart will give you much insight into your talents, your gifts, what you will encounter in your life, because it's a map to your life. And the premise or the basic thing that we should understand before we even get into your birth chart is that your life has meaning and purpose. Everyone's life, there is something about them that they have that can contribute to the meaning of life, to purpose, to enhance the harmony in the world. And when you learn your chart, it is such a blessing because you find out how you can kind of sink in and make the most of your life by finding out what your talents are and also understanding the cycles that you find yourself in right now. Oftentimes people, when they get their chart done, they want to figure out, they've lost their way. They're figuring out which way should I go, which decisions do I need to make. And astrology is like a guide. It's a guide for you. It's for you to get your orientation. It helps you to orientate, reorientate, and say, okay, I have purpose, my life has meaning, and so for me to manifest my ultimate purpose, and I have to figure out my intentions and my goals. And so once you are clear about your goals and intentions, then you can map out a plan. You can plan. And astrology helps you to understand what cycles you're going in so that you can make the best use of the time. Astrology helps you on so many levels. For one thing, we have to understand that this particular world or this particular time period that we're in, it's very easy to get or feel out of sync, out of sorts, because there is a lot of, we'll call it the matrix, so that what is presented as reality, or what is presented as what is most important in life, what has been glamorized as to the good things in life, when a lot of people, they end up trying to pick up things, they're trying to acquire all this money or material things to, because it's, society says that this is a good thing to do, and then once you acquire it, you find out it's not everything that you thought it would be. There's a song out by the great Peggy Lee that says, "Is that all there is? Is that all there is?" And so it's important on a spiritual level and an emotional level that you connect with your purpose, you connect with your meaning. And when you get your chart done, it shouldn't be something that feels so out of character for you. It should feel like a hand in glove. It should feel like this was something that I know that you have natural inclinations, a natural inclination. For some people, it's about expressing themselves through music. For others, it's about helping people with a certain talent that they have. Maybe they like to help people adorn themselves, to dress well, or to just help people, assist them in whatever their problem is. But the chart can help you get even more specific so that going to work ends up being a joy instead of drudgery. Taking care of your children, just so that you would know how to bring out the most of them, bring out their most innate talents, to understand the qualities they need to develop in order to be the best that they can be, what disciplines they may need to utilize. That is the beauty of learning or knowing the charts of your children, the chart of your husband or wife, knowing how to best get along, to find out what you both have in common. Those elements are priceless, to understand where you may have conflicts and how it's a way to resolve. That is a whole system of itself in astrology. They call it synastry. When you actually get 2 charts done, you compare your chart with your significant other, or with your child, or even with your boss, whoever you interact with. You can get a chart done and find out what is the bottom line, what is it that you share with each other. And that's a true blessing. So astrology has many, many different levels to it. There's astrology just for gardening, knowing when to plant certain foods, knowing when to weed. There's a time when the moon is in the phase of going from a full moon to a new moon. That is what they call the waning phase. And that is a time when you want to get rid of or release certain things. And weeding your garden is perfect. Or cutting back on your trees or branches, whatever you need to do to cut back and shape up, is another time when you would wait for the waning of the moon, or when the moon is getting ready to get dark again. When you begin projects, when you start things, you should begin them on the new moon or the next day or two after the new moon. That is a beginning cycle, and things normally grow. Even your ideas, your things that you want to put in action, you want to sync up with the moon. Okay? That is a natural energy element. There's times when there are what they call Mercury retrograde. It happens about 4 times a year. When Mercury is retrograde, a lot of things go every which way. You may be driving and there's traffic jams. Now, there's traffic jams normally anyway, but this might be the mother of all traffic jams. Or there are certain things that you want to do, or there's, like for instance, in New York, when there's a Mercury retrograde, there can be major traffic issues that back up things for miles and miles. So you have to anticipate that. There's times when you are looking for information and you can't find it. You may want to go forward on signing contracts, doing certain business deals. But when Mercury retrograde happens, there is a delay. And you should go with the delay. Don't force the situation. Go with the delay. It means for you to do more research, to really clarify certain issues before you make a total decision. Because if you do make the decision, you may find you have to go back on it and clean it up. So that is the whole idea of knowing about the different cycles. When there's a void of course moon, this is also again something that in business, a lot of times you want to go forward, you want to make decisions, getting certain things done. But when the moon is void of course, which means that when the moon makes its last aspect in a sign, it goes through, in other words, when the moon is in a certain sign, we'll say it's in Taurus, and it goes through all the degrees, but maybe at 20 degrees Taurus, there's no more major aspects it makes to other planets. They call it a void of course moon. And so that's a time when things kind of, it's a good time for creativity. It's a good time for relaxation. It's a good time when it's not such a strong time for business elements. You change that energy into something else, something maybe more creative or something on your own time. Now, a void of course moon may last a couple hours. Sometimes it's a whole day, depending on what's going on. So you do your routine, but you may find that certain significant things that you want to get done, it's not a good time. It just, things kind of become a little lackadaisical. So it's the thing though that you have to understand, that you have to be aware of, is that you observe. There's a whole quality about astrology where you have to kind of observe. You almost make you can even have a diary about what you do on a day-to-day level and certain things you wanted to accomplish, they didn't happen. If you look back on it, there might have been some major aspect, like a void of course moon or Mercury retrograde. We just have to observe and see, and you'll see for yourself how your cycles work. Because even though we do have these cycles, we still have to develop our own tenacity, our own strength, our own discipline to persevere and get things accomplished. It just may mean organizing our time accordingly. All right? So that's the beauty of astrology. Knowing the timing, knowing your purpose in life, making the best use of your time. Those are just basic elements. Now, we also want to know about, well, I'll tell you what. Let us continue and take that up in the next segment, because for one thing, if anything you know about astrology, astrology is a vast subject. It's not something that you'll be able to acquire in one day. It's something that's an ongoing learning experience. And so take your time. There may be a lot of language. People throw words around and you're like, what does that mean? And I, as an astrologer, will take my time and explain that to you, the different things when they talk about aspects or planets and houses, or what does it mean when I have a Mercury rising and my Venus is square Jupiter. I don't know what that means. Can you explain that to me? Yes. all of these are elements, they're patterns that some of them are more personal. And once you know your chart, you'll know what certain aspects you have, the qualities of those aspects, and how to turn them into assets and stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. I thank you for your time, and please continue to listen. We're going to go into the second, uh, reading of this. Thank you.